Hey Night Riders, Disregarding Henry here with another edition of Unmade Masterpieces! Riddle me this. What do Harold Ramis, John Waters, Steven Soderbergh, and David Gordon Green all have in common? At one time or another, they each attempted to film an adaptation of John Kennedy Toole's classic novel, A Confederacy of Dunces. This is a project that has become legendary in Hollywood as the film everyone wants to make, but no one wants to finance. Ever since the novel's publication in 1980, director after director, producer after producer, has struggled in vain to bring Toole's picaresque vision of New Orleans to life. For more than 30 years, the film has languished in development hell, and no one seems to know exactly why. Since the production history of this project is so long and detailed, and since the book itself has such an interesting story behind it as well, I'll be splitting this episode into two parts. Part 1 will focus on the book, Part 2 on the movie. A Confederacy of Dunces follows the misadventures of Ignatius J. Riley, an obese, misanthropic, yet highly educated medievalist who lives with his mother in 1960s New Orleans. After his mother tires of his slothful behavior, Ignatius is ordered to find a job and earn a living, or else be kicked out onto the street. Using this deceptively simple premise, Toole takes his readers on a hilarious journey through the unique setting that is New Orleans, creating an unforgettable tapestry of supporting characters, using his brilliant ear for language to transcribe the distinct rhythms of speech specific to the denizens of that time and place. The novel is a brilliantly sustained series of comic set pieces that finds Ignatius falling into and out of employment, always creating ill-fated plans and schemes to try and turn situations to his advantage, and always offering a running commentary that elaborates on his strange ideas and perspective on the world. This is a work whose brilliance lives in the specificity of its characters and dialogue. It's completely unpredictable. It exists outside genre and reflects the singular brilliance of its creator. At first glance, it appears to be a rambling mess, but in its final chapters, a greater structure and purpose is revealed that completely takes us by surprise. The whole novel has been so painstakingly put together. Every event, every character, every bit of dialogue is so carefully chosen to build to such a beautifully orchestrated climax, but it reads as if the author is making it up as he goes along. It's one of the best comedic novels ever written, and continues to be read and find new admirers to this day, but its road to publication is one of the most troubled and tragic in recent memory. Written by Toole around 1963, when the author was in his mid-20s, no publisher seemed remotely interested in it. Toole was a struggling writer, with only one other novel to his name, titled The Neon Bible, written when he was only 16, which, at the time, was also unpublished. Toole spent years trying to find a publisher for his opus, to no avail. It attracted some interest from Robert Gottlieb at Simon & Schuster, but after several years of negotiations, a series of creative disagreements sabotaged any potential deal, causing Toole to abandon his efforts of finding a publisher. Suffering from severe depression and paranoia, Toole gave up on his writing career in the late 60s, and after a mental breakdown, committed suicide in 1969, at the age of 31. He would have died a failed writer and been forgotten, had it not been for his mother. Thelma Toole, devastated by her son's death, made it her mission to find a publisher for her son's manuscript. She believed in his talent and knew in her heart that A Confederacy of Dunces deserved to be read. She sent it to publisher after publisher, and like her son, was met only with indifference and rejection. In the mid-70s, she began contacting author Walker Percy, asking him to read the manuscript and help her find a publisher. Percy initially avoided her, but she refused to relent. Finally, after cornering him in his office, Percy promised to read the manuscript simply to get rid of her, hoping it would be so bad he would only have to read a few pages before dismissing it. He was astonished to discover what he considered a masterpiece. Quickly responding to Thelma Toole, he announced that, like her, he would make it his mission to have this manuscript published. But the troubles weren't over. Even with Percy behind it, an accomplished novelist with works like The Moviegoer to his name, A Confederacy of Dunces still could not interest publishers enough to see the light of day. Percy and Thelma Toole would continue their struggle for several more years before it finally, at long last, paid off. The Louisiana State University Press agreed to publish the novel in 1980, 11 years after its author's suicide, in a first run of just a few hundred pressings. Walker Percy wrote a foreword, and A Confederacy of Dunces was unleashed upon the literary world, where it almost immediately began making waves. Critical acclaim was nearly unanimous. It was quickly reprinted by Grove Press, translated into nearly 24 languages, and in 1981 won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. To date, the novel has sold more than 1.5 million copies. It also resulted in Toole's earlier work, The Neon Bible, being published in 1989. Against all odds, A Confederacy of Dunces has become an enduring cult classic. Toole has become one of the most legendary names in 20th century literature, and it's all the more tragic that he didn't live to see it. But thanks to the perseverance of his mother and Walker Percy, his work lives on. But as bumpy as the novel's road to publication was, it's nothing compared to the film adaptation. One of the first people to receive a copy of the first edition of the book was producer Scott Kramer, who immediately wanted to adapt it. His attempts began as early as the year of the novel's publication in 1980 and continue to this day. As of the date of this video in July 2015, A Confederacy of Dunces remains unfilmed, and the struggle continues. But more of that in part 2. If you'd like to learn more about author John Kennedy Toole, I suggest checking out Corey McLaughlin's critically acclaimed book Butterfly in the Typewriter, and if you haven't read A Confederacy of Dunces, I'd suggest picking that one up as well. This has been Unmade Masterpieces with DisRegarding Henry. If you could subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, like me on Facebook, or follow me on Twitter using the links in the description below, it'd be much appreciated. And of course, thank you for watching.